Hi, I'm Christopher Weatherhead and I'm here with my colleague Eva Blum-Dumontet.
Hi.
And we've been working on a report together on a Philippines phone. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about it. So can you tell us a little bit about what the background for this report was?
Yeah, I mean, this report is part of a broader project on low-cost technology, and I think it would be great if you can tell us a little bit more about that afterwards. But essentially what prompted this particular research was that one of our colleagues last year traveled to the Philippines, and she was using her personal phone, but her personal phone broke. So by the time she arrived at the airport in Manila, she needed to buy a new one that she would be able to use there to be able to call us, to call her friends and family. Anyway, so she purchased this phone and she brought it back here. And we were quite intrigued about this phone because there were all sorts of apps already pre-installed. And obviously it was an extremely cheap phone running an outdated version of Android. And as part of specifically of the research we wanted to join low-cost tech, we realized, well, actually this phone is a very interesting one to look at to see what's exactly in there and in what way can using this phone be putting, the people who use it at greater risk of privacy violation in terms of security as well, compared to a regular, more expensive phone. And actually, can you tell us maybe a little bit more about the low-cost tech project and what motivated it?
Yeah, so phones are often sold, especially low-cost phones are sold as loss leaders. The manufacturing development costs outweigh the actual profit that a manufacturer might be able to make on the device, and therefore the device it has to be subsidized either by the contracts with the manufacturer between third parties like Facebook, or they have to come from advertising revenue through trackers, or they have to be subsidized by some kind of subscription-based service that the manufacturer provides. This can often be like health services or other services like music or whatever. And it's not like we're focused particularly on that relationship that companies have with third parties and companies use with advertisers, as those who have the cheapest devices are disproportionately affected by basically having their data exploited.
Yeah, and so actually what was interesting with this phone is that there were quite a few of apps, as I said, that were pre-installed, and a lot of them were quite political in nature, actually. There was a lot about sort of nationalistic feeling, Filipino nationalistic feelings. There was a clear sort of like political agenda in the apps that were pre-installed, which isn't really something I expected when I started the research, which made me think about the way this might be abused in other countries, where actually, where phones might be coming with political propaganda as you buy them. Also, I mean, some of the services on those apps were paid services. I can't remember if I mentioned this, but obviously, I mean, all those apps were actually tied to the phone manufacturers. So they were the ones who designed those apps and who put them up on the website. It had nothing to do with the service provider. And so, so it's unclear the amount of data that those apps necessarily collect or who they share it with. But already we have those apps that are pre-installed, that are asking lots of permissions, that are inciting people to purchase them, to purchase extra services, and there is obviously the political nature of those apps.
Cool. So based on that, what sort of findings, other than the political nature, was there any other findings?
Well, I think what was interesting as well is the question of security, right? Because actually, one of the apps that we looked at had vulnerabilities, but also more problematically maybe is that this phone is a certified Android partner, and yet, despite this reality, despite the fact that they should follow a certain standards, they were using an extremely outdated version of Android. That was already really outdated by the time we bought the phone, and so that obviously raises serious concern when it comes to the security of the phone.
Because we bought the phone as new, like it was off the shelf. It wasn't second hand or through a third party or anything. It was directly off the shelf, and it's a 2016 model year phone. We bought it in 2018, and it's running Android 6, which I believe came out in 2014. So even by the year of the phone, it's quite an old version of Android. Yeah, the primary app on there, which is quite worrying, is the registration app. It has it asks the user to register for warranty cover from the manufacturer, and asks for a load of information about the user, and then it transmits that information over a non-encrypted channel to a server somewhere. However, since the phone came out, that server that it's trying to transmit the data to is no longer available. So instead, it eventually times out that connection to try and send that data, and therefore it keeps retrying to send the same data no matter which network the user goes on. And this means that every time a user connects to a new Wi-Fi network, anyone on that network can see the user's gender, their age, the phone's IMEI number, the locality of where the user's from or the person's from. I think it's province and country. That's quite a lot of information about an individual that's being leaked.
Yeah, and actually there was another app that we thought was quite interesting to look at as well, which is not technically the manufacturer's app, but was Facebook Lite. And Facebook Lite is a version of Facebook that's specifically designed for this kind of devices. It's designed for all phones or for countries where the bandwidth is quite low. It's very well, as the name suggests, it's a light version of Facebook. And so, I mean, if we're talking like frankly about this is also like Facebook for the economically disadvantaged, essentially. It's Facebook for people who don't have the access to internet that global north countries might have, or don't have the expensive phones, essentially. And what is the reality of Facebook Lite? Well, I think it's no surprise that when Facebook had a massive password leak, internal password leak, where hundreds of thousands of passwords were internally accessible to any Facebook employee. That was actually purely pertaining to Facebook Lite, and that was for every account that has once logged in through Facebook Lite.
From what I recall of that story, it was like hundreds and thousands of Facebook Lite users were affected, tens of thousands of Facebook users were affected, and then thousands of WhatsApp or Instagram, I can't recall which one were affected. So disproportionately, if you say affected users of Facebook Lite.
Facebook Lite, yeah.
So they were, from whatever the security practice happening internally in Facebook, they were being offered less protection than most users.
Yeah.
So, based on this, is there anything that PI is asking for in the way of change going forwards?
Well, I think we would definitely demand that equally high standards are applied, whatever the device you're using. We think that privacy isn't a luxury; it's a fundamental right, and so it shouldn't be dependent on how much you can spend on a device. It's unclear if it's specifically because of those apps that this device is so cheap. But clearly it creates a context and a reality where when we can't afford expensive phones, all privacy and all securities are jeopardized. And so that's something we want to challenge. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the technical demands we're making as well.
As you said, this is Android phone, and it's from an Android certified partner. And part of the certification process is that the apps on that phone are supposed to go through the same security and privacy auditing as apps on the Play Store. But it's unclear which bits are being audited and by whom. A lot of phones, maybe not so much this one, but a lot of phones have lots of variants. Is Google testing all the variants, or is it spot checking various ones at random, or how is it doing it? It'd be nice if Google would explain how its methodology here works. And these apps that come pre-installed, they can't be uninstalled. The best they can be done is disabled, but they're still installed on the device. And some of these apps, with the exception of Facebook Lite, can't be updated because they're not available on the Google Play Store either, which is very problematic. So as I said earlier about the vulnerability in this app, this vulnerability will never be fixed because the app will never be patched.
Yeah.
This is also a general security problem, as if a security vulnerability happens, these apps often have pre-accepted permissions, sometimes even custom permissions, that then if a security vulnerability exists, allows them to have privileged access to the phone outside of any kind of way of mitigating.
No, and I think that also precisely raised the question of the responsibility of Android when a phone has such sort of deeply ingrained problems as having apps that aren't in the Google Play Store, cannot be uninstalled, cannot be updated. Can a company that does that really be a trusted Android partner? I think that's also a real question to be asked, and a real question around the responsibility of Google in deciding who is a trusted partner and who's not.
Yeah, so what we'd like to see is that users are able to delete apps on their own devices, keep control of their devices. And going back to previous work we've done, we'd like to see the way that users can control their privacy being enhanced inside Google, not just at the permissions level, which has been recently added in Android 10, but also which trackers are available, and global blocking or disabling of certain trackers. Perhaps you don't want to be tracked by Facebook, or you don't want to be tracked by Google. These should be options. The problem here is the long tail of Google's Android ecosystem and operating system. Even if they release something now in Android 10 or Android 11, it's not going to help users who are buying phones today that are running Android 6, 7, even 8.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's great talking to you.
Thank
you for your time, Eva.
Thanks, Chris.
If you want to find out more, there's a section on our website dedicated to this. There'll be a link underneath the video.
And there's always a lot going on the social media.